As we celebrate International Women's Day all month here at Capital Media, my very special guest today on the Red Couch, as we celebrate International Women's Day, I have Shafia London, who is the country manager for Barbados, for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Dominica for the Ambev Group, otherwise known here in Barbados as Banks Holdings Limited. Is that fair? And correct? Yes. And smiling next to her is none other than Khadija Marshall, who is the commercial manager. So ladies, welcome to the Red Couch.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Always a pleasure, always a pleasure. We are largely a matriarchal society, or has been. Yeah. And yet, over the years, it was the men, the boys, who were being pushed forward, who were moving forward, and not the women. And yet, the home was structured largely around strong women.
The women.
Any thoughts on that?
Certainly. I think times are changing, though. I would say that. And I think Shafia and myself are a testament to the fact that times are changing, and women are now, whether propelling themselves or being propelled, are stepping to the fore. In terms of men being put forward, I think it's just tradition.
And it's probably what society needed at the time. So at the time, it's probably, moving, considering our history in the Caribbean, the men needed to do the menial tasks, going forward, working in the agricultural fields, etc. at first. So naturally, it became a man's world. And so you find that more men were leading. It is still a man's world, let's not deny that. In many respects, men are still leading in most of our business places in some of the Caribbean countries. It is changing because the roles have changed. Women now see themselves more than home carers. We now, it's not just about taking care of the kids and taking care of others, but also we recognize that empowering women actually empowers the family and empowers the household. And as the demands of life change, you now need women to balance what the man has contributed over the years on his own.
But I remember when, with some interest, when I saw the first woman bus driver, for example, in Barbados. And you see this big bus and you see this woman driving the bus. I remember also at CBC when I was there, and we broke barriers with a young lady named Muriel Sidney, who became the first radio operator, and this was like such a big thing. And looking back now, it was like, well, really, what was so big about that? You know what I mean? It's not a difficult job technically, but yet it was seen as going through the ceiling a bit. First sanitation worker, I saw a woman pulling sanitation stuff and so on. And I would lie if I didn't say that I felt my pulse jump when I saw a Liat plane and I saw the captain open the door and realized, oh gosh, it's a woman flying the plane, you know what I mean? And so on. So would you say that you have broken through the ceiling in most areas, or are there still ceilings to penetrate?
I think the ceilings are penetrated completely when you stop being surprised. When you stop being surprised, right? So
I'm
you
not
said
surprised anymore. I really no longer surprised, but I just wondered from a woman's perspective whether, and there are countries in the world where women, as we know, are still subjugated, where women are treated as second-class citizens, where women need permission, quote unquote, from their spouses or their parents, where their choices are limited severely by society and so on. And surely those are barriers that need to be broken down.
Definitely. I think the Caribbean, Barbados specifically, is well ahead of a lot of countries in the world. Having had that experience overseas and seeing women from different countries and different backgrounds, you kind of understand how privileged you are. One, to be there. Two, to have a voice. 3, to choose to be able to go back home. 4, not to be forced to be married once you get back home. There were some experiences that my colleagues at university had to face when they returned that kind of opened my eyes to how fortunate I was to have a space to go back to that didn't have the kind of societal pressures that some of their home places had. So you're correct in saying that there's much of a way to go internationally. And I maintain that equality is reached when yourself and myself stop being surprised or upset or depressed by other people's conditions, because in an ideal world, true equality means that that surprise should never be.
It's taken as a norm rather than an exception.
Correct.
Yeah.
But International Women's Day, is it still relevant? Is it still important that we highlight International Women's Day and women on a specific day? Not that that is the only time one should do it. What are your thoughts on that, Shafia?
It certainly is still relevant. A society should always reflect its composition in all aspects. So whilst we have advanced in numerous ways in the Caribbean context, and women have taken up a lot more roles that are traditionally not for women, we still have some gaps. We do still have a great percentage of, let's say, senior leadership still being the male figure. We still have gaps in terms of types of jobs. Whilst our company, Banks Holdings Limited, our group of companies, I would say we are probably one of the most advanced. We have 1/3 of our entire workforce is women, but there's still 2/3. Is society 50-50, or is it 1/3, 2/3? How can we truly reflect society even within the workplace? And how can we ensure that as girls growing up, we are providing the same opportunities so that we are not forced into specific roles, and then you have to find your way or break any ceilings. It should just be the straight road for everyone, and you choose based on your competence or based on your passion, and not necessarily me leading a company, a manufacturing company, should not be a surprise. It should not be anything great. I should just be another person competent leading a manufacturing company. So when we get there is when I think it would become irrelevant. We are not there as yet.
My final question to you both, and I give you both the opportunity to reflect on it and to give me your answers. Who are the women that you admire in your lives, in your world, and why? So I'm going to toss it over to Khadija first.
Sure. This one is pretty easy. I take my inspiration from real, tangible people, not so much celebrities and online presences. So my mom is number one. A true inspiration. I think my mom and I, in some regards, are polar opposites. You know, she is this really strong force. She's a presence, and I tend to be a little bit more, subtle and unassuming in my presentation. But she really did pave the way for me. Sacrifices, and I can't say enough. She's my number one. My aunt, my mom's sister. I also grew up in a household with my aunt. She's mommy number 2. Her and my mom are also quite different. She has her approach is a little bit more like mine, slightly more passive, friendly, personable, that kind of thing. So she is the go-to girl in the family. Everybody loves Bebs. My cousin, she is the mom of a child that I consider to be mine. That's how close we are. So we grew up in the house together, and she's like my sister. She's 36, and honestly one of the strongest people I know, because she just perseveres. She goes after it. She doesn't let life stop her. And then I know I said I don't like to reference celebrities too much. I quite like Michelle Obama. There's something about her that's really relatable. She feels like a real person, not a put-on, not a celebrity presence. I admire how she puts family first, even though she's in the spotlight. Her children are most important, her marriage. So there's much about that I think is admirable as well. And lastly, professionally, and I'm not saying this because she sat right next to me, but simply because she is a force. She reminds me of my mom in a certain regard. But Shafia really has done a marvelous job at paving the way and making it look easy, making it seem as though a lady has always been there, and doing so graciously. Shafia leads with confidence, but also with compassion, and I think that is really important. So those are my 5.
Yes.
Those are my top 5.
Thank you for sharing. Shafia?
Well, at the minute, I'm not sure. I'm a little bit speechless. Thank you, Khadija. Thank you so much. I guess you start with family. As I said, growing up with grandparents, aunt, you start with family. So my family, my mother, my aunts, they are all very strong women. Our family gatherings are usually worth a movie. Lots of laughter, lots of explosions, emotions all over the place. But it gives you a place to always anchor yourself and always be true to who you are. Then I've had the opportunity to interact with a lot of women in business, the women even at my workplace. I'm not saying it because she mentioned my name, but Khadija, for example, I once told her, "You're the smartest woman I know," because she's so naturally gifted. And there are a lot of other women who, Cess, who is our plant manager, Lisa, who is responsible for HR and legal. Lots of very strong women who just get things done and get things done quickly and above board. And if I were to look outside, I really like your Prime Minister. I really like Mia Mottley. And when I look at her story and the fact that she's been in politics a long time and seemingly took 30, 40 years to get where she is today, but so well respected across the globe, speaks exceptionally well, very inspirational. I would say I'm inspired by her and what she does. And there are many others, too numerous to mention, but at the end of the day, I think family is critical. The people around you in your everyday life, they're heroes in their own respect, and there's this 1 or 2 persons like Mia, like Michelle Obama, who were sort of like, okay, maybe I could get there.
Ladies, I want to thank you both for being my very special guests today as we celebrate International Women's Day. I hope this chat, this conversation that we have had, and you're allowing me to peek into, your journey, your lives, will also help to inspire young women who may come into contact with this particular interview and give them the necessary inspiration that they need to know that they can be like you, that they can be like a Mia Mottley, like they can be like a Michelle Obama, and go on to great things. So thank you both. Khadija Marshall, the commercial manager of Banks Holdings Limited, and of course the boss lady herself, Shafia London, who heads up not 1, not 2, but 3 countries for her group in the Ambev group, Banks Holdings Barbados, and of course the operations in St. Vincent and in Dominica. Thank you both for taking the time out and sharing some insights with me as we celebrate our women and we celebrate International Women's Day.
Thank you for having us.
You.
It is our pleasure.
Thank you very much.